Hi guys, welcome back to another video. This is another project I made in my free time. I didn't have a specific idea at first, just wanted to create some kind of nature scene. So, let's see how I made it.
To start with the scene, I created a simple plane mesh to make the ground. I'm going to add most of the details later using textures and shaders, so the basic mesh doesn't need to be too complicated. But because the ground is going to be quite close to the camera, I added some subdivision to give the displacement map enough geometry to work with. After that, I used a high-quality ground texture for the shader. Along with the texture, I also used its displacement map to add realistic surface details to the ground. Since this part of the ground is quite close to the camera, having a high-quality texture makes a pretty big difference in the final result. Next, I wanted to create something like a small water pond or a natural water hole in the scene, so I created a simple cube and shaped it into the form I wanted. For the water material, I started with a simple glass shader, but I didn't want the water to look perfectly clean and transparent. Since this is supposed to be a natural outdoor environment, I wanted the water to have some dirt and imperfections. For that, I used an image of the surface of a pond and used its texture as part of the water material. This helped me add some dirt and variation to the water, instead of making it look like perfectly clean glass. After finishing the water, I wanted to create a grass field. So, once again, I started with a very simple plane mesh. Since the plane is going to be completely covered with grass, there's no reason to add a lot of detail to the mesh itself. Now, obviously, we need some grass models to cover the field. For this, I used some grass assets from the Botanic add-on. And to scatter all the grass across the field, I used the Geoscatter add-on. Of course, you can also use Blender's built-in particle system to scatter objects, but I decided to use Geoscatter because it has some really useful features built in. One of them is the wind system, which allows the scattered objects to move naturally, making the grass feel like it's actually being affected by the wind, and that adds a little bit of life to the scene. For the background, I wanted to create a forest-like environment. So once again, I used some tree assets from Botanic. This time, I didn't need any wind animation for the trees. So instead of using Geoscatter, I simply used Blender's built-in particle system to scatter the trees in the background. This is also a pretty simple way to fill a large area with trees without manually placing every single one. At this point, the scene was starting to come together, but I wanted the final animation to feel a little more alive. So I added a very simple camera movement. I just added a couple of keyframes to create a small camera motion. Nothing too complicated, but this little movement helps make the final shot feel less static. For the background sky, I wanted something more realistic, so I used a real sky image and imported it into Blender as a plane. Then I placed it behind the background trees and made a few adjustments to the shader so that the sky blended better with the rest of the scene. And after that, the environment was basically finished. But there was still something missing. The scene looked nice, but there wasn't really a main subject or a clear focal point. It felt a little empty. So I decided to add an animal. Luckily, I had an old deer model that I had downloaded before, and this model also came with an animation of the deer eating grass, which was perfect for this scene. So I imported the deer into the scene and positioned it where I thought it looked best. After a little bit of tweaking and adjusting the composition, I was finally happy with how everything looked. And then I started rendering. And after all that work, here is the final animation. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.